Dog.
It's a good thing, I think. Yay, good evening, members. Welcome to the 20th of January's Finance and General Purposes meeting. Firstly, sirs, a reminder that this meeting is being recorded. Do we have apologies for absence? I'm aware of Councillor Crawley and Councillor Kenson Gurney. Okay, if we don't have any others. Okie dokie. Then we move on to any declarations of interest. Yes, Councillor Jones.
I'm going to declare an interest for the agenda item around the Rotary Club of Dunstable, please, as a member.
Okay, I thought you might. Cool. Right, then on to no members of the public apart from those who are here to speak. So straight on to the Rotary Club. So welcome to David and Alan.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You're welcome. David is going to give a presentation as to why we feel it would be a good collaboration between the Rotary Club of Dunstable and the Dunstable Town Council. Our main reasoning is that we are both similar in one respect. We are both service organisations. Dunstable Town Council isn't a charity, and Rotary isn't a charity either. But both of us do the same thing. We serve the community in our different ways. We've had an initiative this year to actually broaden our horizons and have a better presence in the town. And we have done a lot to support Dunstable Town Council this year, and Dunstable Town Council has supported us. So although you've been invited to be a corporate member, and hopefully after David does his presentation, you'll think favourably on that. We both work together anyway, and that will continue. So I think that's all I'd like to say, and I invite David to give his presentation. Really.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you again for inviting us along. So yeah, I'm David Foote. I'm the club secretary at the Rotary Club of Dunstable. Lots of people have an idea what Rotary is. Some people think that we are a bunch of Romeos, and that is rich old men eating out, but we're much more than that. So next slide, please. We are part of Rotary International. The club was formed back in 1945, so we're celebrating our 80th anniversary this year. Rotary across the world has got 1.4 million members in 200 countries and 36,000 clubs. So it's got a global presence on the World Bank, and it also has representation at the United Nations. And interestingly, our coverage is greater than that of the United Nations. So it's an organisation which has a motto of service above self. But we're much, much bigger than just meeting at the Dunstable Downs Golf Club on a Tuesday and having a nice lunch. So every single minute of every single day, we are feeding someone, housing someone, vaccinating someone, performing surgery, comforting, healing, and providing clean water. These are all functions that Rotary do throughout the world. We have our own charity. It's called the Rotary Foundation, and quite simply, foundation is the American word for charity. That was set up over 100 years ago to ensure the future longevity of the Rotary organisation. The two main functions of the foundation are grants for district level and global. So district is, in our case, Hertfordshire, Bedfordshire, Buckinghamshire, and it's 58 clubs. And then global grants, obviously in the name, it's worldwide. So district grants are small scale. They're matched by Rotary. So we raise some money as a club, and then it's matched by Rotary subject to it fitting the criteria. An example for that locally was Lancott School came to us, and they are stakeholders in the Santa Sleigh project with us. They had a pretty poor environmental area, let's call it a pond. Let's have a look at what that used to look like. and it had fallen into disrepair. It was leaking and it needed to be topped up with water on a daily basis. But all the shallow end here where the rocks are should be water, and then the deep end, well, there was something living in there, but I don't think it's what it should have been. So they asked us if we could do something, and we facilitated the complete transformation of the environmental area, and we put planters in there. We've put a nice pond in, and now the children can have lessons in there which teaches them where their chips on their plate come from, that they're actually potatoes, not just from Tesco. They can see things growing from real basic seed right through to reaping the harvest. So this is one example of a project where we turned something pretty negative into something very positive at minimal cost. So the club, Rotary Club of Dunstable, had some money. We then got it matched by external support by companies, and then the Rotary Foundation doubled that money up. So one small example, something we do in the background. And then bigger global grants, these start at $30,000 US. We start off with some club money, and then that gets matched by DDF, which is District Designated Fund. So again, Hertfordshire, Bedfordshire, Buckinghamshire, and then it's matched by the Rotary Foundation. So again, we can achieve big projects. So locally, we're working with the Luton and Dunstable Hospital, people that are undergoing chemotherapy. A side effect of chemo can often be hair loss, and it affects people's mental health. And there's a new development, fairly new, called cryo caps, and they're like a swimming hat that you see in the picture. They're cold, very, very cold, and controlled by special machines. But what that does is shrink the capillaries in the scalp to the point where the chemo has a minimal effect on the hair and can actually reduce hair loss between 50 and 90%. So huge benefits. Unfortunately, because of the state of the NHS, these are not deemed life-saving, and since COVID, there isn't enough money for them to fund it. So they've reached out to Rotary to see where we can help. So if we raise as a club £4,000 externally, we can match that from within our club because we've got reserves. We're also registered with HMRC for gift aid to make another 2,000. Our district will then double that up to 20,000, and then the Rotary Foundation adds another 8,000. So we're going to raise 28,000 by actually only raising 4,000 at the beginning. So we call that the magic of Rotary, and that is our theme for this year. When we talk to people at the Round the World event, and when we talk to people out here at the bandstand recently, there was a huge response to that, and people were freely donating to our foundation because they trust us. So also within the foundation, Rotary Peace Fellowships. So we run the only master's degree for peace in the world. We've got 7 camps around the world. The nearest one to here is Bradford, and people then graduate from that and go on to bigger things with organisations like the United Nations. More locally, community core, and we define that as non-Rotarians who share our values in Rotary to make better opportunities in the community. And we also run a thing called RYLA, which is the Rotary Youth Leadership Awards, where we take talent, young people, and put them on to courses to build their skills, build their confidence and their knowledge. And we also run a Rotary Youth Exchange where people can qualify and go and live abroad for a year, and then in return host somebody on the way back. So locally then, the Rotary Dunstable have a community corps called the Dunstable Wombles, and I'm sure many of you have seen that. It's a group of non-Rotarians working under our umbrella, and they've actually had a seed corn grant from the council to buy equipment. So that's just another example of what we're doing in the community. And probably the best known is for our Santa sleigh. and this one was in the square last year as we launched our brand new sleigh, and we'd sponsored the Christmas tree as well. We worked in the Twilight Market, providing a Santa in your grotto. And we're also this year having inducted the Quadrant Shopping Centre as a corporate member. We were in there on 3 out of the 4 Saturdays leading up to Christmas. Again, engaging with the public and sharing some goodwill. And then you all recognise that picture, but most interestingly for us is in the foreground, the purple crocuses. Does anybody actually know? Just a nod will do. Do you know what the purple crocuses are signifying? I didn't think they would. We need to put some more signs up. We're not good at telling our story. But yeah, coupled with the Rotary Club of Menham, we contributed to the refurbishment of the War Memorial and planted all over Priory Gardens purple crocuses. And there's a reason for that. Our biggest project as an organisation has been to eradicate the world of polio. So End Polio now is our name for it. It started in 1988. Back in 1989, there were 1,000 cases of polio a day being diagnosed. So in the year 1989, 360,000 people that were crippled with polio. And for just 25 cents, because it's American, we can vaccinate a child against polio. So that's what the world map looked like. The red areas are where polio was endemic. That was in 88. By 94, we've made big inroads into eradicating polio. The work carried on. These are pictures from the World Health Organization. And because Rotary is global, it's the Rotarians at the point of delivery, and that's why it's a trusted network. And by 2006, we'd actually brought it down to just a handful of areas. And what I can tell you is, as of last year, it's endemic in only 2 countries, which is Afghanistan and Pakistan, in 11 cases in the whole world in 2023. Absolutely fantastic. We are that close now to eradicating polio. And it was our promise to the children of the world that we would do that, and we will see this project through. We have now external assistance from the global partnership with the Gates Foundation. Bill and Melinda Gates have contributed $2 for every dollar we raise, and we as Rotary have committed $2.5 billion to this project, and that was over in Houston, Texas, when I went to the international convention there. So this is where we get the information of what's actually going on globally. I joined Rotary to make a difference, and the reason that I'm still in Rotary is because I actually feel I am making a difference, and I can make a difference. So, as Alan's already alluded, we've got shared values. Used pride in everything we do is your line, for the benefit of the community, and hours of service above self match completely. So, as I've already said, we've had partnerships with you working in Santa Grotto, the Christmas tree, the Sunday concerts in the band at the bandstand, and the Around the World event as well. But looking ahead, we'd like to explore how we can work better together. On your own, you can achieve so much, but when you start working together, you can achieve much, much more. And neighbouring Rotary clubs work with their town councils to achieve things. And just a couple of ideas. Christmas Eve, when we finished with our Santa sleigh and it's parked up then, and we're all going off to take a big sigh and a rest after a month of hard work, a proposal, and I think Liz did this when she was mayor, have carols around the Christmas tree. And this is the sort of thing where the Rotary Club can provide manpower, and obviously do it as a joint venture For instance, bonfire night, and obviously, yeah, bonfires are not great for the environment. Then you've got the risks of the fireworks. Laser shows can be done, but again, it's projects where we can work together. So future opportunities, you know, you've heard a lot about what we've got to say and what would you like us to be doing? And I think maybe we can set up a scoping meeting, regardless of whether you join Rotary as corporate members or not. It's still an opportunity to explore how we can work better together. So we're going to extend an invitation to all councillors, because obviously you give up your free time doing your job. Come and join Rotary Club of Dunstable. At least come and have a visit, come up to us and see what we do at the club, and seriously consider whether Dunstable Town Council wants to become a corporate member of Rotary. And the reason I would say that is it's very much like an iceberg. And I can say to you, having now been a Rotarian for 9 years coming up, what you see above the surface, it's very much like an iceberg. It really is just the tip. What goes on below the water level, it's much, much more. So can I, first of all, or lastly, say thank you for the time that you've given us today. And I'd ask, have you got any questions for us?
That's really great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Members, if anyone's interested, questions? Madam Mayor?
Thank you, Chair. I have 2 questions, and thank you for that presentation. It's really helpful. It's likely that membership will extend to possibly the Mayor, Deputy Mayor and the chairs of our committees. The meetings that you hold, are they always during the day on a weekday?
No, they're not. We have recently, under Alan's leadership, changed to having breakfast meetings as well. And we do meet sometimes in the evenings. So it's variable.
Our regular meeting is on a Tuesday at 12:30, at 12:15. In actual fact, you've been to one of our regular meetings, but we do breakfast meetings. We have one on April the 29th this year at the Rugby Club. We had one at Casmix. We also had one at the Flyby Cafe, and we can extend an invitation to Dunstable Town Council if they want to come to one of our breakfast meetings. But they are regular meetings. There's no attendance rule, so once a month. The more you attend, obviously, the more you understand what we're trying to achieve. But what David said is there's 3 opportunities there. Any councillor here would be welcome to come to an ad hoc meeting. Any councillor here would be welcome to join. In fact, Liz has joined as a member. Our reasoning for membership as a whole for corporate has just been presented. We're just hand in glove, really. And I think last year, where we extended our presence to the town, it's a two-way thing. The more we can do together, the more we'll both benefit. But to go back to answer your question, our regular meeting is a Tuesday.
Thank you. I'm just wondering how those councillors that are working full time would realistically be able to attend a daytime or morning meeting, and be involved in those like decision making committee meetings. But maybe that would be officers that would attend those meetings. My other question was, if a councillor was to attend a meeting as part of the corporate membership, they would have to pay for a meal. Is that right? Could they attend without having the meal?
Okay.
They can, but again, what I would say is that the meal isn't integral, but it does start the meeting off, and every member there does pay for his meal.
Ask an additional. And sorry, and what is the cost for
The meal is £23 at present.
councillors? Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? Okie dokie. Well, in that case, we can make a decision as a body of members. Town clerk, do we need a proposer and a seconder for this?
Yes, please.
Yes, please. Okay, do we have any proposers? Any and any seconders? Nick? Okie dokie. All in favour?
Seven, 8, 9,
Okay.
10.
Any against? And abstentions? Okie dokie. Right. Well done.
Thank you very much. Can I just welcome you to Rotary?
Thank you.
Well done.
We know you like volunteering for things, so we'll be round.
I'm just going to say, I think the idea of the scoping meeting would be a really good one now as a way of following up. So
I think you'll find we're very flexible.
Councillor Apple.
I just wanted to thank you for the presentation, because I've seen a lot about Rotary Club and talked to yourselves about it. And, you know, do get a lot out of going around with Santa float and things at Dunstable. It's all start Christmas for me and do it with Liz every year. But I had no idea about the depth and breadth of what you actually did. So I think it's a real good thing to get that out there to so many people, because I don't think hardly anyone knows what you do to the extent that you do it to.
100%. Thank
I
you.
think that's one of the things that we will ask Dunstable Town Council to get involved with us in, because, you know, I think the actual work that Rotary does, a council, most people aren't aware of what we do.
No.
One last thing, the purple crocus. The reason why we plant purple crocuses, when children are vaccinated around the world, because in a lot of countries such as India, to take a child to get vaccinated is quite a thing on parents, and they worry about it. We dip their finger in a little purple dye, so their finger's purple. So the parents know the child is being vaccinated. So that's the reasoning for it. And I'd quite like us to look at something where, even maybe in talk of the town or something where people understand that idea.
Oh, that's fantastic. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You are free to leave if you wish. You can also continue watching if you'd like to hear about minutes and all sorts of things.
You could do your,
You enjoyed the meetings yourself, didn't you?
I love the meeting.
Thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, members. So we are now on to our next item, which is approving the minutes from the previous meeting. Do we have any questions, notes, objections to those minutes? Do I need to propose any second, the town clerk? I shall do. Okay, I'm happy to propose them. Does anyone have a second? Henderson? All in favour? Great. Okie dokie. I shall sign them right now. Thank you. Okie dokie.
Yeah, been up since 3.
Right, on to our next item, which is the action tracker. Would any officers like to speak on the action tracker?
Yeah, if you will. Yeah, members, just to note the items which are ongoing, assuming the complete ones are everyone's happy with. We will look at the options for adding in historic images as and talk the town as the year goes on, especially as we look at 40th anniversary content. The 40th anniversary, as the History Society are looking at plans with other local partners for doing some kind of event in this building to reflect the building's history and the capital's history during the year. We will be putting something up before the next meeting, hopefully, whenever we fly a different flag outside. So there will be some kind of notice board outside with information about the flag that's flying, and just working out the best way of doing that. That's it.
That's it. Great. Thank you very much, Town Clerk. Lots of action. We love to see it. Okay. On to our next item. We are flying through it. On to Lisa for the finance report.
Thank you, Chair. So good evening, members. You've all received the finance report. So this is the update on the current financial year for the budget. So just run through the actions recommended for members to note the revenue budget position for the period 1st of April to 30th of November. So further on in the report, it just mentions that in the summary is that we're currently forecasting an underspend in this financial year of £212,960. That is mentioned later on in another report on how that is proposed to be allocated to assist with the budget setting. And then back to the action tracker, so 1.2 for members to note the current balance of the council's earmarked reserves as at 31st of December. So that's an appendix to this report. Then 1.3 for members to receive and note the outcome of the first interim internal audit for this current financial year. So the internal auditor visited at the end of November, 2 days, visited the cemetery, went through the allotments, cemetery processes, as well as the usual checks that they do in Grove House on payroll, financial, minute taking, etc. And as you will see in the report, that was another successful internal audit. And then the last item on the action recommended, so for members to note the current investment. So as detailed in the report, the current and business account, and then the two deposit accounts and the interest that is earned on those.
Great, thank you, Lisa. Does anyone have any questions about the finance report? Okay, everyone's sufficiently stunned by how exciting it is, I suppose. Okay, thank you very much, Lisa. We can move on to the next item then, which is the corporate services budget proposals. It's assuming it's yourself again, Lisa.
It is, thank you, Chair. So moving on to the corporate services budget proposals report for 25-26. So this report is in line with the two previous reports that those sort of similar reports that have gone to community services earlier in the month, and then again to grounds and environmental services on that section of the budget. So obviously the budget is set into 3 sections for the 3 service areas. So the action recommended for this report is for members to consider and comment on the updated draft proposals, which includes for the corporate services area by reducing the originally proposed Grove House reserve contribution by £20,000 for next year's budget 25-26 by using current year forecast budget underspend, which obviously I mentioned in the previous report. Just noting as well that that budget will, for the following year, will obviously need to increase by that 20,000. So just touching on that, obviously the other committees have considered their elements of the budget reports, their service areas. We're obviously looking at the corporate services. So that corporate services, just to as an overview, that covers central services, so that which is training, professional fees, the IT contracts, etc. Grove House, so that's the whole building, running the building, the cost for that. Corporate management, that includes our health and safety corporately, the corporate insurance cover that we have, the policy, all of our corporate marketing, audit fees, etc. And then the democratic and civic budgets, which cover our remembrance service, obviously mayoral allowance, etc. Training for members. And then the capital projects with reserve contributions, loan repayments for Grove House, etc. Also, it covers the staffing costs for the corporate services team. So just to reiterate the action recommended, we are proposing that we reduce the budget by £20,000 for next year's budget to use current year underspends. Just moving on to part of the report 3.3, where
we have itemised the budget proposed amendment that was taken to full council on 2nd of December, where individual members requested that officers review the additional options for further reducing the proposed budget. So we've just taken out the 3 items that relate to the corporate services budget, itemised as A, B and C. And you'll see as part of that report that the officer review on each of the items details the findings following the request, and that all 3, none of the 3 have been recommended by officers. Obviously, we're open for questions.
Great, thank you, Lisa. Okay, so I would say the best way to do this is we'll discuss item 1.11 and then we go on to the 3.3 points. First we'll start with questions and then we'll move on to those. So if any members have any questions for officers before we do that, I have to give some space for that now. Alcoholic.
Thank you, Chairman. It's not a question, it's just a general comments, I think. To say that actions sometimes have, and usually do, have consequences. And under 3.3, we can see that there are consequences for future years if we were to take certain action. And when it comes to keeping the general reserve to that required level of 25%, then I think one also has to have cognizance of what the council's treasury management policy does require, and it does say that it requires that minimum of 25% of the annual salary budget. So there is not a lot of room that one can manoeuvre in as far as that is concerned. We should be reaching that 25%. I think if I leave that comment there, because we'll come on to talk of the town and so on, I think a bit later, according to your suggestion of taking the first item first.
Thank you. Any other points or questions before we start on each of the actions? Okay. So action 1.1.
Sorry, Chair. Let me just, can I get some clarification on 1.1? So this is reducing 20,000 from using the 20,000 underspend from Grove House. What exactly where is this? The reserve in terms of the building repair, or where is this? Can you clarify that?
That's from the overall council underspend forecast for the year. It's not specifically attached to Grove House.
Right, but it says Grove House proposed reserve contribution.
That is reducing the proposed the reserve contribution for Grove House by 20,000 using the council's current forecast underspend.
Yes, okay. Understand. And then you said the underspend would need to be replaced the following year, 26-27. I'm just thinking about the budget for this year. If we had an underspend, is that now a way to leverage that underspend as to the future years?
No, the budget we've set for next year. So the underspend this year is partly from Priory House, which is a short-term thing that won't keep going forever, and also from interest gained from the money in the bank. Whereas we've assumed that we'll have a bit more income from interest next year, and forecast probably interest will actually go down overall. So I don't think we'll have the same level of underspend next year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions or thoughts or points on item 1.1.1? Councillor Brown?
No question. I'm sorry if it's rudimentary or silly. So it's to do with the underspend. So the underspend being what it is at 215,000, right? So using 20,000 of it for the Grove House Reserve. And is it using the totality of the rest of it going into the general fund, the general reserve, or is there other bits?
I think it's detailed in this.
Yeah, it's hay.
But what we propose, as we've been talking about through the year with the general reserve, to bring it back up to the minimum and what we require it to be for 25-26, that is 145,871.
Yeah.
Then we have the 20,000 that we're proposing in this budget report, and then the 40,000 that we proposed in the Grounds and Environmental Services budget report. That comes to 205,000. Obviously, the forecast is movable. This is what we're saying at the moment. We're forecasting for this year, but as it stands, it's looking at 215,000, of which we would like to allocate 205 to what we're proposing today.
Okay, cool. It was the 40,000 in grounds that I was missing. Thanks.
So in essence, Chair, can I just come back with one last question? In essence, we are bringing the general reserve to the required amount. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Okay. Does anyone have any other questions or points? Okie dokie. I keep saying okie dokie.
Really do.
Let's vote.
I think what you were going to do
Yes.
was invite amendments to the recommendation 1.1 before we vote on 1.1.
Yeah.
Am I?
Yes.
How exciting.
And you were going to invite members if anybody wanted to propose anything around 3.3A, B or C.
Well, I was going to do 1.1.1 first, and then I was going to do 3.3 separately. Is that okay, Town Clerk?
Absolutely.
Very cool. Right, in that case, I'm happy to propose action 1.1.1. Do we have any seconders?
Please, second.
Okay, Councillor Brennan, thank you. All in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Then that's carried. Right, on to 3.3. I should note before we start 3.3 that I've put forward an amendment on this, which I am amending, incredibly, because I have unintentionally duplicated point B of A, B, C in 3.3. Is this even remotely followable? Is everyone?
No.
Yeah, no, okay. So,
I'm glad you said that, because when I saw your amendment in an email this morning, I'm thinking I've read that somewhere already.
Yeah.
right, so what, it's not that interesting, but what happened is that I confused myself, and it's fine, it's not, anyway. So I'm withdrawing amendment 1 of the 2 amendments I've put forward, because it's already in here. Apologies for confusion and duplication, everyone. So let's move on to item 3.3, which contains within it 3 different actions that we should all consider and decide whether or not we'd like to vote for and propose and second and all of those fun things. So in that case, what I've been advised is best is we do a temperature check in terms of if people are interested in each action, we do a proposer and a seconder. And in that case, officers can run through the information for that, and then we can all vote as a room essentially on that. So we will start with 3.3A, which is the Reserves Adjustment Plan. Do we have anyone who's willing to propose this? Okay, Councillor Gurney, and anyone who's willing to second? Councillor Tomorrow. Okie dokie. Lisa and Paul.
Okay, members. So just to reiterate, really, we've set a treasury policy as a council to have a general reserve of 25% of salary budget. Whilst there's no specific law that says what the general reserve should be, it's a requirement of the General Practitioner's Guide that we do have a general reserve. The guidance for town and parish councils is that smaller parish councils should have 6 months of expenditure budget as a general reserve. Larger town and parish councils should consider having 3 months of budget, overall budget, as a general reserve. Historically, this council took the view that as one of the particularly larger town councils, we didn't need to have quite that much. So that would be £1 million for us, roughly speaking. Historically, we've taken the view that we did need less than that, but 25% of salary budget. So come up with the current calculation of general reserve, which stripped down the definition of salary budget to include only salaried staff. So it's not casual staff or overtime staff in there. So my strong recommendation to you is that we've set the general reserve at the lowest it could be for a town council in terms of the policy. I don't think we have a policy for less than that. And a council should absolutely adhere to its own policy on its general reserves, not to do so if we got to difficult water and it was realised that we hadn't met our own general reserve, but it had been possible to do so. I think we could be at liability over that. So I would strongly recommend maintain the general reserve as it is. It's not a strictly a legal requirement, but it would make me nervous if we failed to do that.
Okay, thank you, Dan Block. Councillor Hollick.
Yes, I'd certainly agree with that, and it is a matter of good practice, and there could be consequences if we didn't adhere to that. We're not here proposing any change to our Treasury management policy at this juncture, and I think that it would have to be a proper proposal if we were to change that. But given that this is a sort of overall direction, I suppose, that we should be going, then one has to ask, if we did not go down this road, what are the consequences, the audits and so on? I'm sure there are people who could make a comment about the fact that we were not pursuing our own Treasury management policy, if that was the case.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hollick. Anyone else? Councillor Tamara?
Thank you, Chair. I do agree with the comments Councillor Hollick did make, but I also pick from the idea that if we were to have the general reserve slightly less than what the current proposal is, what it should be, there's no law that prohibits us from, having it at this level. Therefore, I personally don't think there's an issue if the council, supposedly we had the same issue a couple of years ago, or even last year, where the general reserve was at slightly lower than this current pace. So generally, I don't feel there's an issue having it slightly less if we're in a dire situation. However, what we are hoping to do is to get it to the level which the council is currently proposing. So I think it's fine either way.
Okay. So in that, I mean, Councillor Tamara, are you proposing that we do look to change the Treasury management policy?
It's not something I can propose right now. That's not a conversation. I'm just making the comment that this might come up again. If we decide to propose another high council tax precept next year, for example, we're going to have this conversation again. Therefore, I think as members, we need to think on whether or not there are real evidence of issues if we do otherwise. Does it make sense? So, yes, we want to get this proposal to meet, what we've decided that this council treasury management policy should be. However, if the council cannot afford to do that, then there's no law that prohibits you from having it at 400,000 if that's what the situation is. And that is something to put in the back of our mind, because we might come back to this next year, having the same conversation of raising the precept on a high level. Do we put this every year on the taxpayer, or do we consider changing how we, the management, the treasury policy of the council? This is not a conversation for now or a decision for now, but I think we might come back to it at some point.
Thank you, Councillor Tamara. So I've got next, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Tamara. I do understand your point and where you're coming from, My understanding is that a reserve, you know, a prudent reserve for any business, which this organisation is in place to ensure that business can afford the costs that it needs to pay for, to ensure that there's no delay to payment to suppliers or wages, you know, that things run smoothly financially. And I think as a council, it may not be sensible for us to not follow our existing policy. Granted, it could be changed and amended, but I think for us to look at taking money from the reserve to reduce the precept is probably not the wisest thing. I would personally rather try to look at reducing the actual costs of contracts and services and find the savings there, so that the reserve actually would come down if we're reducing actually the outgoing. So personally, that would be my take on this, that the reserve of 25% of the annual salary budget remains. I think that's a safe percentage, and I don't think it would be a good idea to amend that personally and put anything at risk of not being paid.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Before I go on to you, Councillor Hollick, I will just say myself, I'm of the view that I would rather we not depart from nationally recommended reserve guidelines. They use this for a good reason. If we haven't discussed doing that, but in the event that we're not doing that, in my view, the central issue with this is that we're essentially just kicking the can down the road, and we're asking next year to shoulder the burden of this year. And we did some of that last year, which is part of why our precept increase is part of why it's so large this year. So I personally am guarded against this and that in the other form, but I will move on to Councillor Hollick.
Chairman, yes, to add to that, I think I would remind councillors of what the Town Clerk Chief Executive said right at the beginning in stripping down the costs to ensure that 25% was as low as we could realistically get it, but still maintaining our treasury management policy. In other words, I think you said about the overtime and so on, we're taking that out in order to get to that lower figure.
Thank you, Councillor Hollick. Councillor Brown.
So I don't agree with going against the council's treasury management policy. I think this is essentially, as it's an underspend, it's essentially at this point a reserve. That's what, as I would class it, because it is potentially a reserve. So we've seen in Central Bedfordshire the cost of spending reserves, that once you've spent them, they're gone. So if we don't do this now, that money is gone, and it will go on reducing the precept, and then we won't have that financial security that we need to have in the event of problems like we've had with Priory House. So I do not agree with this. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Does anyone else wish to speak? Okey-dokey. Well, in that case, we can take a vote on 3.3A, which is the reserves adjustment plan. All in favour?
We're in favour of keeping the 25%, is that right?
Yes.
Wait, hold on.
Well, that's
One moment, everyone.
well, Chair, that's clarifying.
Yes.
Yeah.
Please do.
Well, 1.8 says the council could agree to build reserves over a 3 to 4 year period and phase the accumulation of general reserves. I think my point was recommending not to do that. So I think we're taking a vote on, do members wish to not have the correct general reserve immediately? So do members wish to phase achieving the general reserve, or if members are voting no, they're voting to have an immediate general reserve of the proposed correct.
So simplify it by saying that we're following your
recommendation. Yeah.
Yes, so the following recommendation is no on the amendment then, isn't it?
I'm going to trust that you're following this closer than I
The
am.
proposal is to amend the officer recommendation, so you're voting, if you don't want if you want to keep the reserves as they are, you have to say no to the recommendation.
That's a bit counterintuitive, that one.
Yes, it is. Yes.
Because the last paragraph seems to sum it up nicely.
Yeah.
But then it becomes complicated again.
Okay, so to clarify, to vote in favour of this is to vote for the change, and to vote against is to vote for the status quo, correct?
That was my interpretation.
Excellent.
Okay.
Sorry, can I just come in? We've voted on 1.11 already.
Yeah.
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 So where are the other recommendations for this report?
So these are amendments to 1.1 we're now taking.
So this is 3.3A on page 28, at the bottom of page 28.
So effectively,
Yeah.
Councillor Gurney proposed an amendment to 1.1 to take the approach discussed in 3.3A of phasing in reserves adjustment.
Are you suggesting that we can't amend something that's already been
We've
voted
just
on?
voted on it. We've just voted on it. So how can we now amend it?
Now, the chair was clear you're voting on 1.1.1, which is, so the actual recommendation says members to consider and comment on the updated draft budget proposals and fees and charges, as well as indicative budget proposals for the following 3 years. This includes, so you've agreed to include 1.1.1 as a reduction of £20,000. You haven't yet voted on 1.1 as a whole.
Nice.
Okay, so should we now hold a vote for 1.1 and then we should do 3.3? No.
What we're doing is we're amending 1.1 or not amending 1.1. So the proposal from, as I understood it, the proposal from Councillor Gurney was to make an amendment to 1.1 to also include a saving to be achieved by reducing the contribution to general reserve.
So I think we've all agreed that we don't want to reduce the contribution from the general reserve. So I just need to get.
So we
to the point.
vote against that. We vote against
But
that.
the minutes will need to be dead clear on this because it's very, very confusing, I think. So before we put our hands up, perhaps you could just state again what it is we're voting for.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the proposal is to amend the draft budget presented to include a saving to be achieved by not filling up to the recommended level of general reserve in this financial year.
To not.
Yeah.
And that's 3.3A, the reserve
Yeah.
adjustment plan.
Vote against the proposal.
Vote against that.
Then it stays the way we
And
want
it
it.
stays the way we want it.
Right, okay, we're all
don't
clear
go
now.
against
That's what we want the outcome to be.
We
So,
don't go against the recommendation.
Right, thank you, Town Clerk. So all in favour is being in favour of the reserve adjustment plan phasing, and against is the status quo. Okay, right. Well done, team. Everyone, you okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, right. Then it's already been proposed and seconded earlier. So all in favour,
What's that? No.
okay?
You seconded it, so you.
Yes,
vote for
yeah,
it.
that's
Don't
fine.
have to.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't.
That's fine. Don't have to vote for it, but that's fine.
And seriously.
And those
But
against.
I do agree with the principle.
Thank you, members.
Now vote on the substantive, do we?
No, not yet.
Yeah.
Is there other amendments yet to come?
Right, so we are now on to item 3.3B, reduction in publication costs. The council should reduce the number of Talk of the Town publications from 3 per year to 2, generating a saving of £10,000, £10,137. Officers, oh, well, no, hang on, should we do the proposer and the seconder and then an officer discussion? Right, that makes sense in my head. Does anyone want to propose this? Okay, and anyone want to second this? Okay, right, so we've got Councillor Brandon proposer and Councillor Tamara seconding. Right, Lisa and Paul.
So members, if you took out the third edition of Talk of the Town, the issue should, so firstly, we will raise approximately £900,000 advertising. Sorry.
100,000.
900 So you're looking at a saving of roughly 9,000 rather than saving of roughly 10,000. So that's a minor issue in the grand scheme. one of the main reasons we publish Talk of the Town's print edition is because we invest a lot of money in communications. We are all, like every council I've ever known, we're challenged on, do we communicate enough? One of our main answers to that question is always 4 times a year you get a Talk of the Town through your door. Every council taxpayer does. There are a lot of residents who are not on Facebook, not on social media, not all able to see our notice boards because we haven't got a notice board on every street. Can't afford to do that. So there's an equalities consideration here. If we drop the number of residents who see and know what is going on will reduce. We've developed over many years a communications approach with the 3 main editions, whereby we publish the main dates for events in January, and then in the April edition we put information in that's relevant to the first few months of spring and early summer, and then when we've got details ready